good to rest into my body a little bit by the rush morning. I'm taking a few breaths and I'm inviting you to do that with me. Just feel the weight of my body melting into the chair. Dropping into the heart, collecting myself at my center. Last week we spoke about how enlightenment, awakening and then enlightenment, essentially creating a mind capable of modeling reality better. It's part of it, even modeling reality a little less than we're used to. And we finished with the intention to going all the way towards this enlightenment. We're coming back home to a greater sense of flow, unity, wholeness with fundamental consciousness, the ground of being. And so going into this book club, which in many ways is more of an intellectual exercise, I want to still invite us to entertain this intention for finishing the path, becoming fully enlightened as we enter our session today. Even if you don't know exactly what this is, it's still a way to make the wish, to orient the mind towards, to carry this intention, just to voice it into our own minds and into this collective field. Something that we can all align on as we go together on this path of learning. And I'd love to have one or two of you talk about, again, in the context of last week, what genes you're wearing into our session today. Beyond, of course, the wish to be fully enlightened. Anyone want to say anything? What's the intention that you're coming in to the session with?
Well, as you can see, I'm at work right now. It's a bit late. And I came here with a lot of stress.
With a?
I came here with a lot of stress. Just finishing that PR, whatever. And I don't need that here. I definitely don't need that here. I'll need it in an hour and a half or so, but definitely not now.
You don't need that even an hour and a half from now.
I would hope.
Thank you. Anyone else want to say anything? What jeans are you wearing that are not serving you right now?
I'm wearing the jeans of trying to force my head into ChatGPT 4.5 and making it more intelligent than it's currently being, the little shit, and doing AI research and just noticing the shape of my head after a long day of doing that, which is not so much a clear intent that drives me into this particular meeting, but it's an energetic echo that I'm coming in with.
So, as we spoke about last time, our goal in the path is not so much to take off all of the genes forever, but rather to be able to choose the right genes for the moment, the right mental model, the right identity or mask to put on for any particular situation, and in a very dynamic way, which means we don't have an attachment to wearing a particular persona or having a particular agenda in a way that creates friction with what is. And it relates to the why we sit chapter that we're going to go into today, in the sense that this configuration that I'm making the claim, of course, many Buddhist traditions are making the claim, not the first turning of the wheel, but the later ones, that this configuration, what they call Buddha nature or the womb of the Buddha, Sugata Galba, is already there. And therefore, awakening or the full enlightenment isn't so much something that we generate, but that we uncover, that already exists. Of course, it aligns with what we spoke about last week in the sense of awakening is more of a change in how we model reality, both in our modeling capacity and then in the sorts of models that come up as reflections of this reality. And what helps us go towards that configuration is this understanding that I want to talk about today, which is congruent with all of the teachings of all of the turnings from the Pali Suttas and later into the Tibetan Buddhist lineages that have been refining up until close to modern day. And that is that, in a sense, every unit of perception or everything that we call a thing in our minds is created not just by a fundamental content of sensory perception, meaning it's not just a sensory bit like a like visual perception or auditory perception. We don't just have the wavelength um, coming from sound stimulation hitting our cochlea and then being translated into the mind, and we get so that we don't get the raw signal, so to speak. But everything coming in, every bit of signal has attached to it more baggage. Uh, if any one of you, and I think at least a couple of you, know the TCP/IP model, the basic infrastructure of the internet. Love seeing some people not. The information packet that gets to our computer is not just the data. It's just not just a song. It's not just a transmission on Zoom, but it's packed with. This is the unit of data. This is the address on the network that it goes to. This is the protocol that it's aimed at the address computer. This is how the protocol should use the packet, right? So we have like a tiny bit of information, and it's wrapped around with layers and layers and layers of meaning, construction about how it should be used. And in the same way, with every layer of mind, there's more and more of this enveloping of the pure information coming from the senses, telling it where to go. And the act of telling it where to go, or to put the envelope around the basic information, is a continuous act of push and pull by the various participants of mind. We're going to talk about coordinators later, a few chapters down. This is a lot of what we fight over, where the information goes. Because again, as the Buddhists have realized in the direct experience thousands of years ago, information is not just inert in the sense of I have this bit and then I can do this or that with it, but the flow of information or the flow of the entire universe of reality coming through us also has energy in it. And if I can be the one telling the information, right, me as an submind, an aspect of mind, saying, this is where the information should go, this is what should be done with it, as implied by the packets that I'm putting on top of it, the enveloping that I'm putting on top of it, then I'm going to be privy to the use of this energy. I can do with it what I wish. And so we're sort of jumping ahead a few chapters down, but in this sense, there's a continuous economy, or can even say a battleground for how to use this information. There's a push and pull, and this is the essence, and we'll explore that more deeply later, of how attachment is created. Someone, some micro entity inside of us has an interest in shaping the information a certain way. And every layer of the hierarchy, that is the various layers of integration of information of the brain, has its own incentives, has its own ideas about how to best use the information. And so this is, again, what we're calling genes, or the things that we've put on and now have a hard time putting down, even as this enveloping of information, right, sort of compressing it and shuttling it a certain way, isn't what would otherwise be the natural flow of the information coming in. If we were to drop all of the modeling, if we were to drop all of the enveloping and allow information to come in freshly, we would have the opportunity to then model it in a way that's much more relevant for reality as it is, for serving our needs, for taking care of ourselves and our surroundings, which is what we explore later on in the solving the infinite puzzle chapter. And so to connect this to practice, at the highest levels of practice, and so we're not going to do this right now, it requires a particular basing in the collected mind and then some deeper views. It's even possible to start connecting directly to the fundamental units, to the fundamental information, what the Buddhists call contact, or phassa is the word in Pali. And from that perspective, which in some sense you could say is akin to basing in fundamental consciousness, see anything that is beyond contact, that starts being recognition of a particular pattern. And then from the particular pattern to have meaning. It's more than the pattern. I also have an idea of what this means. And from the meaning, I also have a memory of all the other meanings, all the other times that this meaning has arisen in my mind. And then the identity that's tying it all together into I am all of the way that these patterns connect to other patterns and create meaning. And this is what it implies about me and the world and what I need to do. Right. And so just to give you a bit of an intuitive sense of this, consider that what we're looking at right now, right, and from the perspective of us wearing jeans, when we look at the screen and see people and see the buttons on Zoom or whatever it is that's in front of you, if you take a look at a particular button, like the end button on Zoom, you certainly do not just see the little X, right, and the red polygon in the end. It's like it was a very clear, oh, I know that if I click this, the meeting will end. The entire kinesthetic knowledge and the implications of the action are baked into what we often like to pretend is just a bunch of pixels. We really do not see those pixels anymore. They're abstracted. And if we stare at that button, of course, with intention, we can see more and more of the actual sensory perception, right? And certainly we do that often. Like, for example, if we read something and we sort of like, what's that word? And we look a little closer and we see each individual letter. But unless we are very, very well trained, we completely lack the capacity to connect directly to those component pixels, what in the book I often call sensory bits or mind atoms. And the basing in is what I'm calling fundamental consciousness. So a lot of this path is a continuous unwinding of this enveloping of the predetermined, in a sense, meaning that's applied to every type of information coming in through our senses in a very habitual and grasped way, and learning to perceive reality from lower and lower levels of integration of this information, lower and lower levels of construction. Construction being a word that Buddhists, especially in the West, very much like to use. And it's also, in construction, is also the counter word to emptiness. Shunyata, or emptiness, which is the core insight that Buddhists speak about from the second, mainly from the second turning and on, but also from the first turning, is exactly this. What Buddhists are trying to point us towards is the lack of any inherent meaning or any inherent being of any thought, any meaning, any identity, except as composed of these sensory bits, or those fundamental contacts, fundamental units of fundamental consciousness. And so this path of emptiness, getting all the tools to allow for emptiness practices and going deeper and deeper, so to speak, into emptiness, is having a more and more direct perception and understanding of the constructed nature of the mind. And that not in a conceptual way. It's not like, oh, I'm seeing something and I know that it's a construct and I see the underlying thing and the meaning and everything. Those may come up, but we're looking for a direct cognition of the fundamental bits along with the structure as we know it, such that we do not only perceive the level of the structure, but see more and more of, even if not the contact, but at least the units that are less composed, less predefined. And in the beginning, or I'll say in every layer of this process, every jump to what I'm calling a higher basis of operation, which is a term coming from Dan Brown, one of my teachers. With every jump, we're able to maintain in awareness a less constructed reality. And then every structure of mind then aligns to be constructed in a way that relies less and less on rough and gross concepts or constructs. And as we transform the mind this way, it also creates the space to then jump into a higher base of operation, align the mind from there, and so on until all the way down, until we're really based in the non-constructed. And that's the whole path. That's the entirety of the path. And this is what I'm calling those finer pieces, is what in the solving the infinite puzzle I'm calling more refined Lego pieces of mind. Right? It's a fun way to think about this is a mind that, rather than being composed of all of the annoying Tetris pieces that are hard to fit in, right, to solve the Tetris puzzle, imagine that everything coming down in the Tetris screen is just the one rectangular box. It's not that annoying thing or this annoying thing. It's just box, 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 and everything fits in just right without effort. Right? You can still create any type of construct that you want, any type of beautiful Tetris tower, but you have more choice. You can arrange the pieces in exactly the way you want them to go. And I think the last thing that I want to say about this, to tie it all together in the way that the solving chapter does, is, this is very important to say. The point of doing this is not just some lofty mystical thing, some realization that's beyond the ordinary, beyond the human, but this capacity to have a mind that can identify and then utilize finer Lego pieces means we can take care of ourselves better. All of the needs that are inherent in our biological and also psychological system, around finding food and shelter, and all the way towards social connection and even self-realization, are helped by our capacity to model our reality better using those finer Lego pieces. This is one of the core claims of that chapter. By having a higher vantage point, more sophisticated basis of operation, we can move in the world such that with less investment of energy, less effort, and creating fewer externalities, all sorts of collateral damage in the world that we're not even aware of from the lower bases, we take care of our needs. And we learn to even do it in such a graceful way that with one move, we not only satisfy our own needs, but can include those of people that we care about. And unsurprisingly, if you've been walking this path, the people we care about is a sphere that grows and grows and grows again as we learn to abide in and act from more sophisticated bases of operation. This is my summary and spiel for today. Now I'm handing it to you. Let's talk about it. Yes.
So when you say more and more sophisticated bases of operation, to put that in different language, would, like, let's say a concrete example be noticing that, like, oh, I feel, this in my stomach. I noticed I'm seeing these things. I noticed this thought arising. I noticed that, this emotion arising. I could attach a label anxiety to it. Instead of being like fused with, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, it's just like noticing all these little things. And then so that deconstruction is what you're referring to as a more sophisticated base of operations. Is that accurate?
So what you're talking about is close to it, because you're speaking about the level of the content that comes up, and this greater deconstruction or less attachment and identification is what happens naturally or with less effort the higher the basis is. Imagine that even from the most ordinary mind, you could point someone and tell them in real time, hey, you are not the anxiety, right? And if they have enough space from that, you can then tell them, oh, what if you just felt the sensations in the body and not even call it anxiety? Right? So actually this is a perfect example of how we can have like a whole, oh, I'm the anxiety and everything is terrible. And if like you're sort of stuck in this narrative and that's something that happened in the past, right? Some very coagulated concept, and it's projecting towards a future and everything is very tense. You get some space from it. Then the next step can be, oh, wait, why am I even calling this anxiety? Even that is a sort of construct, and it has a lot of baggage. And if I'm feeling anxiety, maybe I have shame around anxiety, or someone told me that if I have anxiety, that it means I'm not doing this or that well. But it's just like, oh, wait, a bunch of sensations happening in the body. And then through what we call primordial wisdom, just the shape of our body and its innate wisdom about what to do with the sort of thing, giving it the service of allowing those signals to come into spacious awareness, lets whatever the process is unfold naturally without the frictions of wearing very tight jeans. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, Boris.
I have two questions. One a little more technical about the model of the subminds and packets of information. What seems to me strange in your model is you talked about the units of information as if they are concrete. Information can be duplicated, and why to battle on how you shape your packet when you can copy the information and everyone can use it in a way that the submind would like. So why the battle?
So first of all, the human brain is analog, right? We can't just copy and paste like we can in digital form. Secondly, along with the information coming in, there is energy, right? So it's not enough. So we explore this in the later chapters of Spinning in Samsara. In some sense, this is what the mind tries to do. There's an experience that that is read as positive, as pleasant, as good, and then the mind tries to recreate it. And if it cannot recreate it in the world, it creates it in fantasy. And not just the type of fantasy where I'm sitting down and like imagining things or at night in a dream, but in some sense, I'm always living the fantasy. I'm always trying, or not I, but certain aspects of mind with particular agendas are continually trying to overlay their best idea of what reality is on experience coming in. They're trying to either just feed itself the regurgitated experience, or to use that capacity to then orient towards what the conditions that would have this experience arise again. So I'm using the opportunity to point us back to the What's Awareness chapter, where we talked about how there's a hierarchy of spaces of awareness, each trying to apply top-down iteratively the model, and then in the later chapter, how we see that keeps us stuck spinning in the same model and disconnected from a more ground level reality. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. And another question is, you've talked in previous sessions about the way of emptiness and the way of fullness. Could you connect the other direction to what we are talking here?
So emptiness is, sometimes I like calling emptiness something like dissolving, expanding, because we have those constructs and we relax them, and then the information coming in is more free. And then once the information is free, then what beautiful thing can we build with it? Right? Because again, we're not just staying in a completely dissolved state. Some earlier traditions, both in Buddhism and other wisdom traditions, the highest states were considered to be the ones where you're just like, you're not there, just a bit. Then with the later turnings of the wheel, the Mahayana and later on, there was emphasis on not just dissolving and finding personal freedom, so to speak, which is the main criticism of the second turning of the first turning. Just like, oh, I'm enlightened, bye. It's how do I create a beautiful structure, an enlightened mind, a bodhisattva, bodhicitta, right? Body awake, chitta mind, that then creates opportunities, creates structures for other people to attain the same realization, to find freedom, and to then even join them in creating beautiful structures in the world, right? Which is much more the essence of Vajrayana. It's even not so much, so let's all just be free of this mess. Let's all have a beautiful life. Let's make something amazing. Let's contribute to the conscious evolution of this entire universe. So the first movement is sort of dissociating, disentangling, dissolving. And then as we do it more and more, we can go the fullness path, which is about creating more developed constructs of mind and of reality as a whole. So emptiness, fullness, or dissolving, freeing up resources, and complexifying, developing, creating constructs.
Does it happen serially, or it happens at the same time?
Happens spirally. The more you can let go, in the sense of losing attachment, the more the bits of mind can begin reconstructing in new ways. And there's something to be said about also going on paths of development, right? This is a lot of the work of Ken Wilber in Integral Philosophy, talks about the different vectors of development. So you can be more developed in terms of your morality or your intelligence or your aesthetic sense, right? It's not something that, of course, it naturally develops, but you can pour your energy into this or that and develop this way, and it allows you to create more sophisticated structures that we call moral structures or intellectual structures or musical structures. Victor, yeah.
I have a question about your mention of information energy and how you perceive the difference. Is the difference simply that information is a packet that's gross enough to be perceivable and energy is more subtle, or do you consider them of different natures or somehow fundamentally different?
So this is like a 2-hour talk that I can give. Let's see what we can essentialize here. Because there's a way that information is energy and vice versa. Or when you have, well, I'll say this more physically correct, which is when you have information about a system, you can tease out the energy from it. The more information you have, the more energy you can take out. And in a state of maximum, what's called maximum entropy, or the more you trend towards maximum entropy, the less usable energy you can extract from a system. And vice versa. If you have energy flowing through a system, flowing through a medium, then that medium will be organized, meaning it's going to grow in terms of information quotient to allow for a better order or better configuration for the energy to flow through it. This is what's called the constructal law. I talk about it later in the physical inevitability section of the book. So I don't know if this really helps. I don't know. Maybe you tell me more about what it is that you're trying to get to with this understanding.
I suppose I'm trying to understand in which way they are substantially different. Yeah, the being the sameness part, that seems like fair enough, but yeah, I don't fully understand the distinction.
Normally, when we say maybe this helps. Normally, when I say information, I mean, what are the component bits that are available to shape into something? Right, like right now, I'm seeing your face and I'm seeing colors and shapes and arranging them in my mind into a vector. Right, and seeing you, there's also an energy that comes up, and I can choose how to direct it. Right, which is equivalent to the enveloping of the packets of information. The question is just if I'm attached to a particular way of arranging the information flowing through me, right, in a particular way, or if I have the freedom, even a conscious freedom, to decide what to do with them in every moment.
So would you consider energy the part corresponding to the sensory bit that is your own internal experience, or as in the emotions that it activates, the energies in the body that are activated by the sensory bit?
All of it. Every way in which your system mobilizes when it gets poked.
Okay, thank you.
So sometimes people tell me that because we get so heady, we sort of get away or go a little too fast for integration to happen. So I'm gonna take this opportunity. Moshe, I see your hand is raised, but let's give it a few seconds of just breathing, the natural process of taking in everything that we've just talked about. Slowing down for a second. Sometimes there's something very relevant to our lives that this brings up, and we just want to note it. Maybe what we talked about just lends itself to some follow-up question. My desire for us here is that we really come out with an understanding that is usable in our lives, not just something that lives up here, but the types of insights that are going to help us with our practice, both on the cushion and also in our day-to-day lives. And when we're ready, feel free to keep asking commentating.
I was I was kind of like wondering. I mean, I personally I like the path of purifying the concept and try to get into alignment with the intention of Buddhi. But I was somewhat challenged by an expression that I learned it from other school in Vedanta and yogic psychology that talks about an expression like the light of consciousness lands on Buddhi as pure aham. Similar to what you're saying, that it's whatever is there is lands in a pure form, and that might be true, but for me it's kind of challenging to understand, because I was wondering, because of our mind, our machine is designed for a particular purpose, let's say survival in the first place, so it's already tinted. Yeah, it's all, we talked about the filters, and it's biased toward a particular purpose. So if that's true, everything that we perceive is tinted and is colored in one way or another, so it cannot be perceived as pure. So the moment it's created, it's lost its purity. I mean, I can see how we can
What is pure?
realize, what is not, yes, and really removing the layers and pointing to the direction of what it is. But the question for me is it possible to be in contact in the purity of the object, or whatever it is that is there?
So what is pure?
That's a good question. But we talked about removing the layers to see that in a clear way as is. It is what it is. Even it's very hard to define what it is. I don't know what it is because for me, I see everything unpure. So I mean, conceptually, I can understand that, and I can see what is not pure, but to see what is pure is somewhat different.
So when we say pure, just like with every other word, it is in relation to something that we've defined as impure. And generally speaking, I don't like the word pure. People tend to have many associations with existing religions and jihad and whatever. I like less constructed, or I like fundamental consciousness. Pure also, even without the jihad, it might lead us to have an idea of something self-existent, something that exists even outside of us perceiving it. The reason I like the word contact, phasa, is that it doesn't imply there is something, and then I come in and I'm like, hello, something, right? The contact only happens when there's a sensory perception and something sending a signal or just existing. There's transceiver and receiver, like something communicating and something receiving. And the contact is just a, right? This does something, this does something. And this is not pure, this is not pure. But you could say that if it's just this, the contact, right? The making contact, then it can be more pure if this bit continues flowing downstream without having something come up and say, oh, this actually that implies, oh, and this implies, right? And all of these motions are still bits, like this stuff is a bit, right? In some sense, they're still composed of contacts. I'm sort of giving away the game. This is what we talk about in we're all just walking each other to the same home. That's the main insight of this path, in a sense, is even the thing that we're calling tainted or impure is still made of the same bits, same contact. But as we go down, there is a sense that we really want to call purity, because those are the words that we can use. But it's just a way to describe an experience. And any way to describe an experience is not the experience. So don't get hung up on the word pure. Looking for purity is a recipe for disaster, is a cause of suffering. What we're trying to do is let go of any idea of what the final destination is, but we do it progressively. This is also what I'm talking about in the Why We Sit. There's a progressive approximation of the final state that we're going to, each a little more deconstructed, each allowing for the bits to be free to construct something more developed and more fit for the moment.
Yeah, and that's exactly precise why I'm kind of like focused on the word purity, and you're right. But sometimes the language that we use, and that's why, when I heard that sentence about pure aham or whatever it is, I mean, it would be enough to say for me that we, as you said, without the full contact, kind of just contact, just let's try to remove all these layers of conceptions that we have as much as we can, as close as we can, and that would be enough for me. I mean, again, I'm not, maybe there are these people that were able to get to that particular contact and they experienced that, yes, without any concepts. But the path is the same to me. But I just wonder if it's possible to get to that particular experience without any filter or so on and so forth. Maybe just kind of terminology, but if we're talking about,
there's always a filter. You are a filter.
yeah, so if this is the case, we won't be able. So we're just refining the filters. So that's okay.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Refining the filter that we are. 100%. As a note, this is why I'm excited about this work that I'm doing, which is to use modern terms and more abstract understandings that are allowable to us from our scientific, mathematical, logical training, where before people had to be like pure. Okay, but what does pure mean? Oh, it's a hum. A hum is like the self, right? So there's a pure self. What does that mean? They did not have information theory. Information theory is less than 100 years old. I think it's like 1948, right? Shannon, probably Almog knows. Anyway, so many of the hand wavings that I'm doing, right? Even if you translated the words to ancient Hindu or any other language, people will be like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know. No, it's I was taught it needs to be more pure. Okay, so what do? Oh, I'm showering really deeply all day and I'm kind to people. Like you don't have the type of understanding that we can have today, which cuts through a lot of the confusions that would otherwise lead to jihad. Sorry, I'm saying jihad so much. So that's what happens. People make gods reify all sorts of ideas. Oh, this is pure. Oh, everyone has to pray 3 times a day and in this direction. And if not, they're infidels. Okay, let's purify the world and be enlightened. Okay, let's try to avoid that. Okay, I don't know who's next. I think Almog, do you know?
Yes, I believe it's Chen, and after, is it Noyan? Yeah.
Jen.
Back to the kind of energy question. I was wondering in just what energy is. I'm not very familiar with that concept. And then you said something at the end of your response, something about pokes or I missed a word there that I felt like was very important. So I was wondering also what you said there.
The word, the Pali word for energy is virya. It's actually one of the 7 factors of awakening. It points to the way that we can use the energy that exists and even arouse it in a sense, in a skillful way. So we have, as the biological, physical creatures that we are, we have a certain amount of energy, right, created by the mitochondria of our cells, relying on metabolic processes, and also relying on the way that the entire body that we are, with the trillions of cells, come together more and more harmoniously through this path to allow for energy to then be used to create particular states of mind that are useful for the path or for anything that you want to build in the world. But the essential thing that happens with each bit, this is something that I'm talking about in the prediction and information theories chapters, still unpublished. In some sense, every bit of information coming in is like a poke from reality. It's like someone knocking on your door, right? You can ignore it, right? Or you can go open the door, or you can go somewhere a little more far away where you don't hear the knock. But it's there. You cannot pretend that it's not there, right? And so every micro moment, you get a bazillion of those hitting every one of your senses, and then downstream, every one of those pokes, whatever the receptor does with them, is another poke downstream, right? And then the next layer of brain needs to do something with it. There's always this poke, 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 poke. The model that we are creating from a less sophisticated mind, from a mind steeped in ignorance, creates frictions or create a tension that is sort of like battling with poke. It's like, I don't want to hear it. Go away. Not this. No, I'm gonna go to my other home. It has a door that's farther away from my workstation. So I don't, right? Like you, this is craving and aversion. And we go towards a place where the knocks, as we go towards purity, as we go towards purity, as we go towards not having preconceived ideas about what they are, they can become beautiful music. And the energy coming from them leading us to creating things that we find satisfying, engaging, joyful world. Not ultimately satisfying, right? That's what the Buddhists say, but the act itself is joyous, pleasant, satisfying.
Okay, that makes sense. And are the regular like human day-to-day functions of like thinking hard, etc., those aren't like affected by, because I guess for when I feel like I'm more letting the pokes be sensed, it's like too much going on. It's like you know, and I'm like, okay, if I had to really sit down and think through an important thing, I don't know that my brain could, but at a certain point it can do both at the same time.
Both what?
Like let all the energies like not be away from the door, like be, I don't know, open the doors.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and still really intense cognitive. Okay.
Yeah. You become a direct conduit for the flow of the universe. In the first session, we spoke about universal chi flowing through you, feeding you directly and flowing into the world from you. Which is, again, now we mentioned emptiness and fullness. There's also the alignment with all that is. And this alignment is essentially taking on all the knocks, all the energy, and through this, not ignoring, not pushing it away, not escaping, not distracting ourselves with toys, with something else, having it be a continuous expression of the whole flow of the energy of the universe through us.
Okay, that makes sense. And then the going into another room or another house kind of thing, is that, I'm trying to understand what, is that just like we have something we can do with our attention, or we have the brain has some creative ability to like buy into something and make it like a reality? Because if all the things are just hitting us, like how do we create another home kind of thing?
So this is the entire path, right? We can either be, it's too much, and then I go and watch Netflix, or I overeat, or do something that numbs the pain, what I'm calling the pain, like the incessant knocks, or I can give the knocks more space. Imagine time when you did feel anxious or overwhelmed, right? It feels like there's too much. You don't know what to do. Like you're trying to escape. You need some drug. It's not really clear, and sometimes maybe there isn't a skillful option for doing something with it because you're in a war zone or because your baby is screaming. Right? But then on this path, what we teach are skillful means that both cultivate a larger space of mind that allows whatever is coming in to directly shuttle into where it needs to go. Or if when we do feel overwhelmed, like to sit down, create some space, and as much as possible to feel the undifferentiated contact, allowing whatever is that's pressing to go where it needs to go. We don't learn those tools, right? For the most part, maybe these days a little more, but for the most part, I can report about my life as a kid in school. If I had some difficult issue or pain, I was told to suck it up, right? Boys don't cry, blah blah blah. You all know what I'm going to talk about. We're not currently living in a society that encourages really feeling everything and being with experience. We're more crafting solutions from a warped mind that then only prolongs and continues the cycle of suffering.
That makes sense. I guess I was wondering more like, even when I'm not like physically doing something else, like I feel like I'm still distracted. Like I'm still not at the door, but then and what my mind is able to do, like the reality is that these things are here and there isn't a closed door, but what is my mind even doing such that it can still do aversion? Like what is aversion? Like in you know what I mean? Like there's nothing I'm able to physically put, but I can still have
it's baked into you, right? Unconsciously. This is what the point of the path is. We make the unconscious conscious. We make every layer of us that has some grievance with reality or with other parts of us come into conscious awareness and find a resolution to the conflict. Find a way to be in greater harmony with all that is.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I think I'm probably getting too into the weeds, but that's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. We had someone, Noyan, right? Did you give up?
I think their answer was, their question was kind of similar in the sense to what Jen asked.
I see. Okay. Right, then take us forward.
Yeah, the question I had is, when I was reading the book and I was reading about the multiple levels of the brain, I couldn't help but think that there might be an association between this model and dependent origination, where the links sort of correspond to different layers of the brain as the signal moves up. Is that a correct analogy?
Yes, it's exactly that. And the 12 links model starts with contact. Well, it starts with ignorance and then how the mind and body come up. But there's contact, And then the way that loops and loops of mind create those structures. And also what's beautiful about this map is that it also shows you where to intervene, right? It's between the feeling and the craving, or between the knock and the response. So we can have a response that proliferates samsara, which is we run away from the knock, or we try to suppress it, we try to pretend it's something else. We tell some story about why it's okay to have a knock, to have something be unpleasant. It's me, it's my fate, I deserve it. I deserve to have a constant knocking. Or we can go towards what's called the transcendental links of dependent origination, which is a series of steps corresponding with this path, which allows the mind to let go of its existing interpretations, all of the meanings that we were talking about, the enveloping of the packets, in a way that allows the packets to be as they are. That's a lot of what the Spinning in Samsara chapter is about. Go into suttas and explore this whole process.
I see. I like this interpretation because also it makes sense from the neuroscience perspective. And one quick question, and it might be obvious to everyone, but what you're describing of ultimately being able to look at the pure signal, is that attainable?
Yes. Otherwise, we would not be here.
That's good to know. Thank you.
We can try to relax into it a little bit more right now. Let's try to make it a little more experiential. So before we do anything, I want you all to know that it's best to let go of any idea of doing it perfectly, and also to let go of any idea of measuring how well you're doing. But you just tune into what I'm saying, and to me, and to our collective space, to our collective presence here, and see if with eyes open, just sort of gazing forward, just like fix your gaze a certain way, and soften your eyes. See also if you can perceive from the center of the eyes. Normally we have some skewedness to the side or up and down. Try to like just relax them forward, very open, taking in a more panoramic view. And have an attitude of receiving everything, like we're opening the aperture of perception. It's the famous Aldous Huxley notion of opening the doors of perception, taking psychedelics. We're doing something that's a little similar. And the more we rest our minds and the more we rest our bodies, really melt into the present moment. Mm-hmm. Just rest and let go of trying to perceive anything in particular. It's still going to happen, the tendency of the mind. Just use intention to slowly incline the mind towards more and more rest. Rest in the sense of not enveloping phenomena, not creating meaning. The more we do this, the more we may feel the freed up energy as peace or even bliss in some places in our body. It's okay if you're not feeling it. It's just that the undifferentiation, the freeing up of energy, the freeing up of the tension that's involved in meaning, might by itself create a sense of peace, give us a sense of, oh, this is where we're going. The type of rest that I can be in all the time, more and more of the time. You may notice that you're hearing more of the sounds from your surroundings, or you feel more of the subtle knocks of the sensations of the body. This is really a taste of the way of what it would be like to continually take off our jeans. Continuous act of taking off and putting on the right pants. How's this for you? What are you feeling? What comes up?
Was it the question, or
Yes.
when I try to do all this panoramic sensory perception, I was seeing the knocks from within in the mind
Hmm?
that are also, I think, deserve relaxation.
Hmm?
For me, it's in a sense like tears, but not in a physical way. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the reason why we are generally afraid or find silence unpleasant or uncomfortable is we're so geared towards escaping the knocks, going for a craving or aversion, because of those things that start coming up as soon as we relax a little bit. All of the unprocessed pains, all of the karma that we're carrying. Consider that this basic, like this, so it's so memed. This experience of being on a date or being with your friends and having an awkward silence, right? There's no reason why it would not be comfortable silence or peaceful silence or a pregnant silence. Creating space for what's not serving us anymore to dissolve and allowing for something new, much more fit for the moment to come up. The awkwardness is just all of the standard mechanisms of enveloping reality with meaning, screaming, but what do I do? What does my identity do right now? And as it starts to feel threatened and loosen a tiny bit. Oh, I gotta say something. Oh, they'll think I'm stupid if I don't say, right? There's this constant trying to figure out what to do with this never-ending stream of information energy coming in through all the senses from inside and out, from within us and from without. We learn to make peace with everything. We learn to be okay with the peace, with the stillness, with the silence, and even learn to start moving from it, moving in a way that's so aligned with it that it doesn't feel like it breaks the stillness, it breaks the silence. Any other thoughts or comments on this?
For me, the periods of peace were brief, and they were interrupted by thoughts coming up, or then I could see my mind shifting to listening to the rain outside and back and forth. So basically, as you described.
Basically what?
What you were describing, that there's always some interruption in the mind, and I find it hard to remain within a longer duration of peace, because my mind does context switching between different events.
Yeah. So this is a good opportunity to mention that all of the exercises in the practice book right now in thrust 0 and 1 are meant to prepare us for thrust 2, to create a mind that's collected and serviceable for the task of starting to empty out all arising phenomena, including thought, such that they stop being a distraction. Meaning you learn how to sit in this space, and then a thought comes up, but you see it more and more as the underlying contact, versus there's a thought and it grabs all of you. And then you start seeing reality through the thought. And then it relaxes and you're like, oh, where did I go? Okay. Oh, next thought. Right? We get into a space where no phenomena is a distraction. No phenomena is a hindrance for peace. So I'm just using this opportunity to plug the actual path, and where thrust 2 comes in, right? This is where we empty out all of the contents of mind from the inherent way, or the habitual way that we treat them as self-existent constructs that somehow define all of reality, that we then use as the genes or as the filter that we mount on top of us and then forget. Anything else on this in this context?
I notice when I purely focus on the expansiveness, the panoramic view, my mind kind of goes like panorama good, non-panorama bad. And so other things that arise are then perceived as distractions, problematic, and then there's this back and forth that happens. And that what I'm increasingly doing now in my personal practice is to kind of find the kind of still point, containing point of the outwards and the inwards feeling. And more so actually focusing into aligning with the contraction in a way that reduces the contrast between contraction and expansion.
Anything else before we move on?
I think, well, for me, it feels like generally protections are always going, or like tensions to I think they're trying to protect. If that drops, then there's an underlying like sadness. I think just like some belief that the world can be painful, that maybe is kind of true, but I don't know that the sadness has to be there all the time. But I think that's the underlying thing, that it dropped. But if I'm with that, it kind of feels good. But my brain is still like, well, this doesn't have to be here all the time, right? Even if the world is painful for the self.
That's right. That's the process. We uncover those layers of mind, of stuck emotion, unprocessed pain, and just be with it. And the only reason why we haven't done this to date is some pre-existing belief, meaning some pre-existing enveloping of the information, shuttling it to a dead end. We're not supposed to be sad. Or if we're sad, we just need to suck it up. Right? And so we empty out, we dissolve those existing limiting beliefs, and stay with the raw experience. And so Jen, that's your homework. Feel all the sadness.
Okay.
Sit in a comfortable space, feel your body, generate a sense of love and care for everything that comes up, and just feel everything.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, so another thing that's important to address in the context of solving the infinite puzzle is that I want to make it very clear that what we call needs are the same types of knock, but from the inside. When we're hungry, it's like hungry, 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 hungry. Or if we feel disconnected from other people, disconnect, 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 disconnect. Or like Jen was saying, if the sadness, it's just like feel sad, feel sad, feel sad, feel sad. And if we really stay with the thing and let it move us, even just giving it our best attempt, let's say, is enough to at least show the thing that's knocking, the need, that it's being serviced, that it's being cared for. So I can be on an island and be just by myself and really crave human contact. And just acknowledging that I have that, and acknowledging the sadness that may come up, acknowledging the uncertainty around when I'm going to be rescued, pardon the silly example here, goes a long way towards being like going to answer the door versus being like, I'm on an island, there's nothing I can do. It's just shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, which is what our mind does. Does the knock, the need, I want connection. And we often just mean it with shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up. In some sense, this is like the anti-pattern of the knock, like the destructive interference. If this is the signal of the knock, we're sending sort of like the opposite one to dampen it, shut down. Versus, right, doing something that resonates it, and even resonate in a way where more and more of the mind starts doing this with it. Each participant a little different to add or provide a different perspective on just the core signal. Now, I know I'm saying something a little obscure here, but just like planting a seed of this. And it's when the mind resonates and learns to resonate and to provide the service, resonating in a bigger space, of allowing the signal to be taken up and unfurled in a bigger conscious space of awareness, that every one of our needs can be met, can be seen in its core, and then combined with other needs into a much more graceful movement that answers all of them. And I have some examples, some simple examples in the chapter if you haven't read it. As we go along this route, we also see that many of the things that we were calling needs were actually not the fundamental needs. It's sort of in the same context of our ideas are constructs, but not the actual contact. Many of our needs, or what we think our needs, are actually these agglomerations of meanings and envelopes, and we miss the actual thing. So rather than have the need, we think that the strategy that we've created to solve the need is the need. And if I don't get this need met, I'm going to die. And in some sense, our identity, right, the big envelope, the thing enveloping all the envelopes into a being that we then perceive reality from, co-opts the actual needs so that if there's a threat to my identity, it feels like there's a threat to my ability to take care of my needs. So as we dissolve all those envelopes of meaning and come into contact with the actual knock, the actual need, we find much finer strategies for answering our needs in a way that doesn't necessitate an identity at all, or at least not a persistent one, not one that's like the card we always play, game of life. I wanted to tie this all in this way, which would lead us to our inquiry for today. which is, and then see how to best craft it. What I want you to do is to think about one of the core needs. And actually, before we do this, just to have some in mind, can you all unmute and just like throw some needs into the space? Shelter, human connection,
Not being alone.
Understanding.
What's that?
Understanding.
Understanding.
Love.
Acceptance. Food.
Peace.
Physical contact. Being seen.
Safety, expression. Beautiful. And so I want you to pair up. And for that, of course, now I know I need to make Amog a host. Make host. Perfect.
Yeah, we're getting there.
And take and take a few minutes. Amog will tell you to think about what sort of need you have, and now you've been meeting it in a more limited way. Right? Like the simplest example is I have a need for food, but I keep meeting it only if it's sweet or only if I have dessert at the end. Right? And to be clear, this is not about hurting yourself, beating yourself. This is not judging yourself. This is expressing it in the same context that we spoke about last week of Kud, no, own, out, dance. Just owning, oh, here is a way, a habit that I've made to answer a need that's limiting me in my life. And you just speak it. The other person is just resting in the body to whatever capacity is possible. You can use the same exercise of like relaxing, being in your body, just taking everything in, just listening to your partner, just giving them the service of listening, and then switch and do the same and come back. We're going to give this 6 minutes, like 2.5, 3 minutes each. Can we do that? Anyone want to share anything that came up? Anything you shared? You realized?
For me, the big thing was the safety piece. That I keep trying to do things to protect from, but like that feels like just a hamster wheel. Like it has to more unconditionally feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Noyan? That's how you pronounce your name? Noyan?
Yes, I'm recognizing the words need and strategy from the nonviolent communication framework, and they seem to use it in the same way, more or less, that you do. Is this an inspiration, something that connects with your own model, and are you using them in the same way that's compatible?
Well, I can say that I had the same realization before I became familiar, but then I read it and I was like, oh, beautiful. Someone operationalized it. So yeah, it aligns.
Thank you.
Also say that in my experience, this has been an important part of my path. The more that I can understand exactly what needs I have, particularly ones that I thought I can only get from other people or all sorts of circumstances in my life, the more that I zero in on the signal and really understand what it's calling for, the more I can give it to myself. And so I become more self-sufficient in this regard, but not in a way that makes me want to disconnect from people, not to do the thing in the world, but rather it gives freedom to participate in the world from a less contracted space, a place where I can enjoy what's added versus from a place of lack that I want to fill in the world. All right, so I'll just take another minute to talk about the next session in the chapter that we're going to go over, which is we have two chapters. One is coordinators, coordinating coordinators, which is one of the hardest things for me to say in English. And then the next one is about gratitude, and I call that the grease that keeps our wheels turning. And we're going to see first what coordinators are, in the sense my conception, or one of my conceptions for subminds, particularly in that it also allows going deep into the dynamics of coordinators, how they work, how they come to be, and all sorts of processes that really show us how attachment is created, why they fight for meaning, and how they learn to collaborate in a way that creates more sophisticated, more graceful acts of coordination. Then we jump into the gratitude chapter, which is a deep exploration of how gratitude is a main component in allowing coordinators to come together in this way. That's for next week. And also a chapter that we skipped this time is the one that implores people to start practicing. So if you haven't yet, I want to remind you that our book club is more of the intellectual exploration, and without the practice, it can only take you so far. So there's the practice book. Some of you are already doing sessions with me. Also, I'm always happy to answer questions and to offer guidance directly. And so consider this my urging for you to get your butts on the cushion. Any final words for today before we jump off? No. Then wish you great success on your path towards enlightenment and beyond.
Thank you.
See you all soon.